Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to the F1 Weekly News Show, and I know it's kind of been bi-weekly, but you know, when we get back into the season it definitely will be weekly. It's kind of picking up news here or there and where it kind of fits into the schedule, but we are back to kind of give you a news roundup. There's quite a lot of stories actually to cover, so it won't be too in detail on the stories, but it will give you the main headlines and my thoughts on them as per usual. Reason I'm not on camera today, as usual in the F1 Weekly News Show, is we are having a bit of work done around the house, so yes, my usual recording space is occupied, so you just have my voice for you today. So we'll get into the news, and our first story is Alonso and McLaren end their kind of formal partnership, and he is no longer an ambassador for McLaren. And it probably seemed a natural end for this. I don't think there was any route back into F1 for Alonso with McLaren. And also, in IndyCar, I don't think he wanted to race for McLaren either. I think it now opens up the opportunity of maybe racing for someone like Andretti or Penske. So yeah, I don't think this split is I think it makes it easier for returning to F1 for Fernando, but I think this was probably more focused on his IndyCar and freeing up his options, because he is obviously desperate to complete that Triple Crown and win the Indy 500. Our second news story is, I'm just going to give you the confirmed dates we now have for the car reveals so far. So on the 11th, the first one, that is Ferrari. On the 12th of February, it is Renault. 13th of February is McLaren, 14th of February is Mercedes and AlphaTauri. So that means we are still waiting on Alfa Romeo, we're still waiting on Racing Point, Williams, Haas and Red Bull, I believe. I don't think I've missed anyone from there. I was thinking on the top of my head. But yes, those are the dates, so we can start getting excited, because I think as soon as you start seeing the cars that are going to be racing for the next year, your excitement comes, and then the car reveals, testing's just around the corner, and then before you know it, it's lights out in Melbourne and we're enjoying F1 action again. So very exciting on that. Now for kind of maybe the backroom staff a little bit, but he was one of the kind of three-man team helping with F1, and that is Shawn Bratches. Obviously he was with Chase Carey and Ross Brawn as kind of a three-man team leading F1 forward, and he will leave his commercial position at the end of January, and this is to spend more time with his family and have jobs closer to home in America. So I don't think you can begrudge him that. I think he's left a lasting impact on the commercial expansion of F1. I think he's done well. He was involved in a lot of expansions of current racetrack contracts. He was involved in getting Vietnam and Zandvoort onto the race calendar, was also, I believe, an integral part in securing the Drive to Survive series, which also has become a very popular series, and I think engaged maybe a lot of new people into F1. We're not too sure on that, but certainly existing F1 fans have enjoyed it as well. So yeah, he will leave, and I think he's done a pretty good job for F1, and yeah, fair enough that he wants to go and spend more time with his family. I wish him all the best in his future endeavours, but I think he will remain as counsel to F1. He just obviously won't be in the job full time. Next story is Marco's at it again, and just in terms of his straight talking that you almost have to find amusing at times. Sometimes obviously he oversteps the line, but obviously Carlos Sainz had a very good season last year. Marco says no regrets over Sainz. We don't regret letting Carlos Sainz go because he is no Verstappen. it's probably a fair comment. I'm not sure if Carlos Sainz is on the level of Max Verstappen. He is obviously a very talented driver, but I'm not sure. Only time will tell how talented he is and what impact he will leave on the world of F1 when he decides to move on from it. But yes, typical Marco going, we don't make mistakes, we're not sorry about Sainz, we've got Verstappen, and it's very clear that Team Red Bull is Team Verstappen. Next one is Renault talking about the 2021 rules and expecting a substantial, I think, benefit from it. They are really expecting to do well. There's kind of another news story mixed in with this in terms of they can't use the expected benefit in 2021 and prioritising those rules for a poor performance in 2020. But yeah, Renault are definitely one of the interesting ones to look out for this season and how they progress. But yeah, they certainly will be one of the teams looking to nail the regulations in 2021 and be fighting at the very top end of the grid. Then a bit of a strange story. I don't know if he was misquoted at all, or he was this brutal in terms of it, and that is that Jean Todt, obviously head of the FIA, the president, he said personnel should feel lucky to be in F1, and that is obviously in some reasons of complaining about an extended race calendar from there. Yes, obviously being part of F1 is a very prestigious and very great thing to be a part of. I think a lot of people do dream of being F1 and jealous of the people who are in F1, but also they are human beings and we can't just work them into the ground on the pure basis of you should feel lucky to be in F1. There's got to be there has got to be a middle ground, because you know it is fantastic and they are the ones that all add to contributing to making F1 as great as it is. But they can't just be work mules or kind of robots. They do need their family time break as well, and we can't take them away from their families for even more of the year than we already do. The next story was in relation to Dan Ticktum, and the Williams guys said he's one of the best they've ever had in their simulator. So very high praise. Indeed, I know we've spoken it a bit in kind of the F2 ones to watch. There'll be a video coming out in subsequent weeks with a little bit more focus on Dan Ticktum. But yes, I know he is a character who divides opinion, and his attitude and way that he's conducted himself on a racetrack has been less than desirable in the past, but he certainly in Dams and Williams has a very prestigious platform to showcase his abilities from. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on in F2 this year. Now on to another controversial topic, and that is Saudi Arabia potentially having a race in 2023. Now obviously this region of the world, notoriously viewed from the West, from our side of things, lots of human rights violations and the way that they treat people in like LGBT rights and how they treat women is very unfavourable. And I think the question has been whether going to Saudi Arabia in 2023 is a good thing for F1. Should we be supporting those things? At the end of the day, as harsh as it sounds, and they should come into equation, but I think what will be the main defining factor is, can they financially benefit F1? Most likely yes. If they financially benefit it, they will probably secure a race, and in that case you can say F1 might be used as a vehicle for change, but you can look at other places like Bahrain, and it hasn't really changed anything out of there. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think this is certainly a case of money talks, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops and whether it is on the calendar as early as 2023. Now we move on. Our last couple of stories we sped through here, hopefully given enough detail as we've gone along, but we have Stroll still favourite to secure a stake in Aston Martin. I think he is heavily linked with securing that, and then it'll be very interesting to see what goes on from there, because obviously Aston Martin have a link to Red Bull, Mercedes have a link to Aston Martin. There's a lot of their engines power, Aston Martin cars. Will Racing Point become Aston Martin Racing Team as an individual by itself? It's a very interesting one to watch. So the first almost move in this chess game is Lawrence Stroll securing that stake in Aston Martin. So yes, he's still very much favourite to do. I don't know if this will happen before the season, but I think it's certainly a story to watch over the next few weeks and see how it all develops. And then the last story was basically Sergio Perez bigging up Racing Point's chances in 2020, going how their growth can be F1's biggest in 2020. Obviously finished 7th in the Constructors last year with a fairly average start to the 2019 season, expectedly so, because of all the things that happened with VJ, and obviously going into liquidation. Now with Lawrence Stroll's back in, they seem a strong team, strong back in. They've always been a team that have got the best out of their means. I fully expect Racing Point to be challenging for best of the rest this year. And it's going to be very interesting to see. Sergio Perez was the form driver of the second half of the season, scoring more points than any other driver in the second half of the season. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Racing Point get on this season. But guys, that has been another F1 Weekly News Show and another roundup. As always, comment down below on your thoughts on the stories. What are your thoughts on Racing Point competing in 2020? What do you think about Jean Todd's comments about personnel feeling lucky to be in F1? What confirmed car reveal date are you most excited about? What do you think Alonso's ambassador partnership with McLaren means, if it means anything at all? And what would you like to say about Shawn Bratches after he leaves his role? Has he left F1 in a better place than when he started in 2017? It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on that one, guys. And if you are new around here and you like what we do, don't forget, press that subscribe button for more content just like this. We'd love to have you in around there. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And I guess the only way to end this, as always, guys, is for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.